This GTX 1060 used to be the top graphics card, the most popular graphics card on Steam. Now it's gone down to 6th place, topped by the 3060, believe it or not. This came out in 2016. I know, right? 2016. But has the GTX 1060 peaked, or is it still a worthy contender? Let's find out right after this. Let's go over the specifications of the NVIDIA GTX 1060 6GB variant from Gigabyte before we go diving into the games. This version of the GTX 1060 from Gigabyte includes the patented wind force fans where they spin towards each other like that and then chuck out any heat up the top of the GPU. So assuming if you have it that way, it's actually quite good orientation in your case to have the hot air go out. These things don't get that hot, to be honest with you. And we can check that later when we're playing games. Now, we know this has 6GB. We've said it enough times already. This is, though, GDDR5, and it's only on 192-bit bus. So the memory speed itself is not actually going to be as amazing as some newer cards are going to be. Obviously, this is a card that came out in 2016, so they made some compromises to make it cheaper. So the bandwidth of the memory is actually going to be a little bit slower. Now, whether that plays and has any effects on the actual gaming, well, we'll see that very, very soon. Now, this GPU has two overclockable modes, OC mode and gaming mode. Gaming mode will give you 1771 megahertz boost, and base will be 1556 or thereabouts. In overclock mode, boost will take you up to 1097, and base clock will be 1582 megahertz. Now, as you can see on the screen now, it says it supports up to 8K. Now, desktop-wise, probably, yes, it will support up to 8K at 60 hertz, but not for gaming. You would not want to game at 8K on the GTX 1060. Now, let's talk about the system that we're going to be putting this in to test and show you the games today. It is my main editing rig, after all. My actual test system is not quite ready yet. I'm waiting for some parts to come for that. So I'm having to use my actual gaming rig, so my editing rig, it's kind of a catch-all system. So my system is a Ryzen 7 5800X. Didn't get the X3D yet, maybe eventually I'll get that. And that has 48GB of Crucial Ballistics Max RAM. As you've probably heard before, we've mentioned that before. Can't get Crucial Ballistics Max RAM anymore, but I have 48GB of it, which is quite nice. And the CPU is cooled by a Asetek 360mm radiator. Okay, so the games that we're going to be testing on this GPU today are GTA 5, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Death Stranding, and of course, we couldn't complete this video without showing Microsoft Flight Sim. Okay, now we've got all that out of the way, I think it's time to get this put in the machine and see how it performs. Okay, so now we've got the GTX 1060 installed into my editing rig there. You can see we're using the Gigabyte Extreme Gaming software. Now, this is very similar to MSI Afterburner. It's very similar to that, but it's just Gigabyte's own version of that kind of software. You can increase the GPU clock, GPU voltage, power limit, which we've set to the maximum, which is 16%. And the memory clock. We're not going to touch the memory clock. We've set the GPU clock to plus 22 megahertz. Now that is the actual overclock mode, but for some reason there's a security issue with the bit of software. Maybe it's too old for Windows 11, the latest version of Windows 11, and it won't actually let me select it. As you can see on the screen now, I'm like kind of clicking on it and it's just flashing and not actually enabling. So I've worked out that actually all it does is increase the GPU clock by 22 megahertz. And that takes us up to our boost clock, which is 1794. Hopefully I've got that right. If not, I will put the actual boost clock on the screen below. Yeah, we've set our power limit to plus 16. So the power limit is set to 116, which is fine. That we want to give it all the power we can, give it the best chance of still being good. So here we are in GTA 5. Now we've changed the resolution. All the games actually were going to run at 1080p because let's be honest, the 1060 is actually designed to run at 1080p. We might try 1440p, but I don't think it's going to perform that well. It's really a 1080p card, especially with 6 gig of RAM and the limited memory bus. So here we are in GTA 5, and as you can see, we are hovering around the 80 FPS mark on the pier or near the pier. And I've got to say, it doesn't look, I mean, it looks fine for 1080p as far as 1080p goes, but I think the fidelity of 1080p just isn't there anymore. And it's definitely showing its age for 1080p gaming. Now, as in terms of smoothness and playability, well, it's absolutely fine. It's playable. We're getting, as I said, about 80 FPS there. The GPU is actually only about 63 degrees, and believe it or not, nearly 40%, let's not crash, of the CPU of the Ryzen 7 5800X. So in GTA, we're actually using just over 5 gig of the available 6 gig of RAM on this graphics card, which is good. So clearly this game is absolutely fine at 1080p. As you can see on the screen, the GPU is running at 1886 megahertz. That's actually higher than the rated boost clock that we showed you earlier at the beginning of the video, but that's probably because we've raised the power limit to 16%, so it's got a little bit of extra headroom there to push those clocks a little bit higher. Not bad for a 1060. And for those of you that are on a electricity budget, you can see there we're not peaking over 100 watts with the 1060 at 1080p. Absolutely fine. It's just awesome. Now we've put our 1% and 0.1% lows up on the screen and our average FPS there on the right hand side. And you can see average FPS currently is about 83. That's increasing as we're driving around. And our 1% lows have gone down to about 66. So that's still above our 60 FPS on our 1% low target that we like to achieve. Let's drop down a little bit there. But our 0.1% lows are about 47. They're hovering around that, which is quite nice. But I'm not noticing any stuttering or anything like that that would really ruin the gameplay at 1080p on the 1060. Absolutely fine and very, very playable indeed. Just not quite the fidelity that you get at higher resolutions. But if you're looking for cheap gaming, well, relatively cheap compared to what some people want the 1060s for on online marketplaces these days, which is quite frankly obscene for a 1060, but that's a different video. It's still quite a good entry point into PC gaming at 1080p resolution. Now let's have a look at the settings that we're using for this particular video that we're showing you now. Just to show you there, we are running at 1080p. We're running in window because I'm, as you can see, capturing the game there. And here we have everything, I think, set on very high. Text quality, as you can see, I'll scroll down there, you can see everything is high or ultra. So that is what we are running at on our system currently. And I think that we can probably tweak that to get the FPS up a little bit, but actually, I think it's all right. Okay, so this is the very start of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, right after, or I think just before the crash. I think it's after the crash in the actual game, but before the crash. Anyway, the story doesn't really matter in this instance. But as you can see on the screen now, or hopefully you can see, we're getting about 60 FPS or just under. So we're gonna turn on the benchmark mode and you can see the 1% lows and the 0.1% lows as we're climbing out of this cavern. Now, I'm sure that will drop. As you can see, it's dropping right now. Our average FPS is on the right-hand side where it says Direct 3D 12 there, and we're out of the cave. Okay, so we're now out of the caves, as I just said, and we can actually move around now. Our average FPS is 61, although I'm sure that will dip as we move along. And as you can see, our 1% lows, our 0.1% lows are 31, so actually quite low. The GPU is currently maxed out, and it's still running at quite a cool 67 degrees, actually. We're only using 5.2 gig of RAM there, and again, the megahertz is maxed out at 1886, as it was in GTA 5. Still though, only using about 100 watts, maybe peaking over there to about 105 watts as we're moving around, but we're very limited to what we can do here. I'm not entirely sure where I need to go, but probably not fall down there. So far, so good. It's actually running really, really well. Our average FPS is now 60, and I'm really not noticing any stuttering or anything like that. 1% low is only 51 FPS, which is not really noticeable. As we can pan around here, lots of big views. It's quite an enclosed area, to be fair. So we haven't got those big open outside spaces that we would usually use because we're at the beginning of the game. This is just how it starts. But overall, actually running very, very well on its current settings at Ultra. Okay, so Lara being Lara is trying to take photos while everything's around is collapsing. Imminent death is approaching, but Lara being Lara escapes, of course. Now, hopefully we should be out into an open area in a minute and we'll see what difference that makes to the FPS at all. Okay, so finally, after an extremely long cutscene, the cutscenes in this game, most of them you can't skip, which is really annoying. Some of them you can, but most of them you can't. The most important ones you can't. But finally, we're able to move around. Now, again, it's a bit jerky on the recording, so you'll have to see it on this view. There's lots of people walking around, lots of people, well, sitting around actually. And our FPS has dropped a little bit, but not that much, to be honest with you. Down to 55-ish there, 54. We're seeing our average FPS is now 63. 1% lows 49. Our 0.1% lows are now down to 34. But that was probably during the loading of the cutscenes and various things like that. As I said, completely playable, lots to see and do here in this particular area. Now this bit is on the inbuilt game benchmark, which we will actually run, so let's go and do that now. Okay, so this is the benchmark running, and I've enabled the benchmark mode so you can see the 1% and 0.1% lows. And I started that right at the beginning of this inbuilt game benchmark. This is the one you've probably seen a million times. This game's been out since 2018, I think this game came out. 2 years after the GPU came out. So as you can see, this game runs absolutely fine on this now. Super smooth. Our 0.1% lows have gone down to 29 in this section here, but really, really smooth. Don't notice any juddering or anything like that. Again, we're at 1080p, so the graphic fidelity and the clarity of the image itself isn't that great for 1080p, but if all you've got is a 1080p monitor, it's gonna run fine. Okay, so at the end of that in-game benchmark for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, you can see on the screen now that you can see the system, so you know I'm not telling porcupines about what system we're using here. And the latest video driver, I forgot to mention that earlier, we are using 555.99. That is the latest version as of filming this video. Now, I have heard there are issues with that driver, but it will be interesting to see how driver versions compare. But probably with this GPU, the driver version isn't going to make that much difference. But anyway, that aside, we are definitely GPU bound here. You can even see it says GPU bound, 100% utilization on that at pretty much all times there. Moving on to Death Stranding now. Unfortunately, the game capture itself has actually cut off the top half of where it says GTX 1060 there, so you can't see the stats on the game capture, but hopefully you can see them on the screen here now. We can see 66 degrees on the GPU there, 99% GPU usage, so probably about 100 actually. Only using 4.4 gig of the available 6 gig RAM there, which is quite interesting, but we could probably increase the resolution in this game as it's running really, really well, and that will allow it to use a bit more RAM as well. Maxed out on our megahertz there as we have been for all the games so far. And again, the power usage is still the same. So very, very consistent power usage there, even though we're set to 116%. So it's got an extra bit of leeway there for more power if it needs it. 16 gig of system RAM we're using in this game. And let's put on our stats just so we can see them and walk around. Now, this is a very open world game. I'm not that far into it, to be honest with you. Ooh. Oh no. That was close. And yeah, so I don't have that many packages. Basically, you're kind of a delivery person in Death Stranding. I do really need to get back into it. But anyway, I digress. Our 1% lows are 56 and our 0.1% lows are not far off, to be honest with you, 52 there. That's decreasing as we move around and more things are loaded in. Very, very hazy in the distance. There is weather in this game, as you can see, or hopefully you can see. It is actually raining right now, so we've got a little bit of fog in the distance over there on the mountains, so we can't really see too much going on, but lots and lots of rocks around. Again, 1080p, running about 60 FPS on the GTX 1060 with 6 gig of RAM. Yeah, not noticing any stuttering, juddering, anything like that. We've got nice water effects there in the background. Again, the standard resolution 1080p, so you're not going to get that really crisp detail that you're looking for if you are used to 1440p and above gaming. But again, if you're 1080p gaming, which is basically what this card is designed for, as we've mentioned many times already, then you're going to get quite a smooth experience with this particular game. Yeah, this isn't going to end well, I don't think. But as you can see, moving around, as we were a moment ago, pretty respectable frame rates, same as all the other games, to be quite honest with you, and a very playable experience in this particular area. All right, so here we are in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, my favorite thing to do. And it's not really a game, it's more of a simulation. At least that's what I like to think anyway. Before we start this is just a discovery flight. So this is over Naples and we're gonna fly around. You can see in the distance there that there's quite a lot going on. GPU megahertz is maxed out, same as all the other games pretty much. And this one is using a little bit more power, so we're going up. I'm seeing the wattage go up to about 111 watts there, 112 I think I just saw on the screen there. Now I've been told, and I've read many times, that this game is more of a CPU game than a GPU game, but as you can see there with the system configuration that we're using right now, you may not necessarily want to pair it with the CPU that we've got here, but you can see there that we're only using 20% of the CPU. We're not actually moving around in a minute, it's just kind of paused in the air right now and maxed out on the GPU there. I've actually seen it go to 100%. I don't think I've seen that in any of the other games so far. So we are going to enable the 1% lows and 0.1% lows, so you'll see those come up on the screen now. And we are running at 1080p. The resolution of this monitor has been changed to 1080p so that it forces everything to run at that resolution. And let's go and fly. So we're gonna go in the cockpit. We've got no sound, so this is gonna be a little bit tricky to do because I can't hear anything. Oh, there we go, we've got sound now. I can turn it up at least. So looking around, it's pretty smooth. Yeah, I would say I can see what I need to see on this display at 1080p. It is a little bit fuzzy on the displays in front here. Those of you that are familiar will know basically what these displays are in the aircraft here. Now you can see they're a little bit fuzzy. Now don't forget, we are at a lower resolution. Normally I would play at 1440p, so everything is a lot more crisp. But in this, they're a little bit fuzzy. I can still read them, but you can zoom in and see them, that's fine. But if you're familiar, then you'll know what the displays are. But the left display is the primary flight display, PFD, and then you've got the one in the middle or on the right. Let's take that down a bit. And then you've got the MFD, which is in the middle, the multi-function display. And that, as you can see there, shows a map of where we are. Now we can look out the window to our left, and you can see all the lovely Microsoft scenery there. This is a recent world update. They have world updates that makes the world look more real. And looking just out the window there, we're hitting about 40 FPS, which actually for a 1060 in Flight Sim isn't too bad. Now I know we're not moving around a lot, we're just slowly coasting along, but there's a lot of things going on. And this one, as I said, has just been increased in its detail and accuracy as well. So there's lots of things going on that you can see on the ground. As we pan around, you can see all the individual buildings down there. And I have to say, even at 1080p, we are dipping our frame rates there a little bit, down to 34. Our 0.1% lows are down to 19. That could be where we're changing view, but just looking around, if you just wanted to get into Flight Sim and you don't have the money for a top-end graphics card that can play it at 4K or whatever, you know, a 1080p experience is okay. Again, 1080p resolution is not super clear and it never will be, but it's smooth enough to play. And you probably think, well, the frame rate is really low. Flight Sim is known for quite low frame rates. There is a lot of stuff going on in the world in Flight Sim. People strive for super high frame rates, but actually consistent frame rates, especially in a simulator like this, is more important than high frame rates. So even though, oh, you saw it lag a little bit there as it went down, so that dropped the 0.1% lows there down to 2, so that will probably creep back up. That could be because we're getting near the airport. That is a Microsoft Flight Simulator issue, and they should have fixed that, but apparently it's still an issue. But that is neither here or there. The 1% lows down to 22% now. Now, if we come down and land, we're probably going a little bit fast and we're a little bit high for this, but let's see what we can do. Actually, we're way too high to land. So what we're going to do, we're going to circle around, but that'll be a good opportunity to see how it copes, moving around as we are decreasing our speed, not too much, and reducing our altitude so that we can land safely. Bringing our speed down. We don't want to come down too quick, because if you look there, it's not that far away. So we're at fairly good altitude now. I want to try and hold that speed there a little bit. And we're going to come in to land the best we can. Oh, that was pretty lined up very well, actually. So here we go. We're a bit better in position now to land. As you can see, the runway right in front, we are configured to land, or as best as we can configure it in this short space of time. A little bit of a crab going on there. You can see it's not quite straight, but that's because, you know, winds. So that's pushing us around. That's why we're bobbing around a little bit. And as I said, I don't have brakes, so this might not be the best landing. Pappy lights are looking good. Let's see if we can get this on the ground nice and smooth. And there we go, we're going to slam the brakes on because, as I said, I don't actually have any brakes at the moment. We're swerving off the runway, but we landed on the center line pretty much. Fairly consistent frame rate, apart from that one little bit of stutter that we had when we were within reasonable distance from the airport there. Okay, so we've now loaded into a scenery flight over London. London is actually known to be very, very intensive on the graphics card and the sim and the CPU. As you can see now, just hovering here before we actually start flying, our CPU has gone up to about, well, it's hovering, it's all over the place actually, to be fair, so can't really accurately describe that. You can see it hopefully on the screen that it's bobbing around all over the place depending on what's on the screen basically. And likewise with the GPU, it's maxed out now at about 100% there. We're using a little bit more RAM, I think there, 5.9 gig there, and everything else is pretty much the same as it was a moment ago. Although interestingly, actually, our power usage has dropped down. It's all over the place. It went down to about 50 watts there, whereas previously we saw that was going up to about 110. And that's all we've done is basically load into a different airport or different city. Interesting how much of a difference that makes. Our CPU, as you can see, has gone up to 74 degrees there. And our GPU is 58 degrees, so it's actually not using the GPU that much, even though it's not making it that hot, even though it's maxed out at 100%. So we're gonna fly, and let's not crash. So we're gonna fly over London, definitely getting not a great experience over London. So let's enable the 0.1% lows and 1% lows as we go into basically the centre of London. And you can see the dome down there, just to the right of the right wing there, where the arrow is right now. And this is a different aircraft though, so that might have something to do with it as well. But generally, it shouldn't really matter too much, I don't think. But as you can see, not a great frame rate there. We're getting 8 frames per second on our 0.1% lows and 10 on our 1% lows. Not an amazing experience to fly over London, but that may improve because in a future update coming fairly soon, Asobo have said, the people that make Microsoft Flight Simulator have said that they will be completely overhauling London completely. Now, whether that means it's going to be worse on frame rate, I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. As it is now, you can see it's not a great experience. Okay, so going over the settings, you can see there that we are actually using AMD FSR 2 because at the moment it doesn't support AMD FSR 3. It'd be really good if they could implement that for especially older GPUs, because FSR you can use on pretty much any GPU, modern GPU that is. It would just be really good. Now we are set at quality. We can probably improve that a little bit by going to ultra performance, or let's try balanced, for example. Let's save that, see if that makes any difference whatsoever. But other than that, the settings, we are on pretty much ultra. Now, terrain level of detail is set quite high, so we could actually change the global rendering quality to the highest just to give us, or ultra, yeah, let's try ultra. You probably wouldn't want to run it at ultra on a 1060, but we're going to try it just to see what kind of setting we need to make it nice and smooth, basically. Oh, that was not great. You can see motion blur has been turned on again, I think, because I can tell when you're moving around, you get that kind of blurry effect. That's how you can tell motion blur is on. Not really noticing much frame rate difference there. Now, I know we didn't go into the settings and change things for the other games, but this one is a passion of mine, so I'm just going to go into a little bit deeper now. So we're going to go to high end. Wouldn't really call this GPU high end, to be honest with you, but let's see if we can eke out a little bit more FPS and make it at least a little bit more smoother. So we got up to 21 FPS there, which is better. Still not great. So we're going to have to go even lower on the GPU settings, on the preset settings, sorry. And we're going to go medium. Let's try medium, see what that takes us up at. Oh, we've jumped up. We've jumped up quite a bit, actually. Something has changed a lot. We've gone up to 48 FPS there. Oh, yes. I think we're onto a winner here. Let's restart the benchmark and see what our 1% lows and 0.1% lows are on the medium setting in Microsoft Flight Simulator. As you can see there, that's a much nicer experience. It's actually running okay now, but dropping that down does affect the scenery. If you look around you, you can probably notice the scenery for the buildings isn't that great. They look quite bad, actually. And that's one of the reasons why Asobo are looking to increase or change London completely, because it just looks like a pile of rubble, to be honest with you, over in the distance over there. Not really a great experience if you're flying around trying to look at scenery. Now, I don't think there's much point in dropping the settings any lower in this game. We are now getting, 62 FPS there and 66 average FPS. 1% lows are 40 FPS and our 0.1s are 34. I think that's actually not too bad for flying around London. To get high frame rate is probably more, or consistent frame rate is probably more important than visual quality. It depends what type of flying you're doing, to be honest with you. If you're flying scenically around, you might want to go in and tweak the settings a little bit to make them look a little bit better, but you're going to get hit on FPS, especially in this game, or any game, in fact. More so in Microsoft Flight Simulator. But as you can see, the 1060 will run Microsoft Flight Simulator, no problem, as long as you set your expectations and change the settings down to medium, or at least on our system anyway. So that is Microsoft Flight Simulator running pretty well in London. So as you can see, the GTX 1060 with 6 gig of RAM, even though it's got a slower memory bus, it was still coping pretty well, as much as you would expect from a 1060, from a GPU from 2016. Okay, it is old. It is an old card now. And it used to be Steam's top card, now down to number 6, outdone by the 3060 now. It's incredible that this card from 2016 can still play some of the games that we've just played today. It's such a wide range of games. Now, if you want to see us play more different styles of games, then please do comment in the video down below. Maybe we will do a revisit in maybe another 6 months or something like that. Also, maybe we can touch on 1440p gaming. But don't forget, the 1060 was aimed at 1080p gaming, not 1440p. But, you know, we like to push boundaries, and maybe we can do that in another follow-up video as well. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, because we are now really, really close to our 1,000 subscriber mark. We're less than 50 away now. So if you do like this video, please do drop us a like. It's free. Subscribe is free. It would help us out a lot, to be honest with you. And we really do need your help. That's it from me. We'll see you in the next video.